live from their home studios. Please welcome the hosts of DevCentral Connects, Boo Lamb and Jason Rahm.
Hello, DevCentral community. Welcome back to another DevCentral Connects. Today, we are going to be talking about 2022 predictions. I think, at the beginning of the year or late at the end of every year, there's always predictions that come out. Maybe our research team can throw in a recent article that Peter Silva put together, actually, that consolidates all of the top predictions for 2022. I went through that recently to look at what kind of predictions I kind of supported as well, and I found it interesting, people's different views on that. So that one's worth checking out, and that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be talking about 2022 predictions and what we think is going to happen over the next year. I'll be joined by Jason in just a second here, but a couple of things that I wanted to go over. If you're watching the timer, we do have F5 Agility coming up. That is on February 15th and 16th in North America. Over in Asia Pacific and Europe, that is February 16th and 17th. So you want to be registered for that. We have a lot of great stuff coming up. We just announced our keynote speaker, which is Kevin Mitnick, and he's always fun to hear from. So you want to be checking that out. Also, DevCentral will be there. We'll have a lounge where we're going to have a prize patrol. We're going to have some wrap-up, kind of keynote wrap-up sessions as well. So lots of content to consume. And we looked over the sessions the other day, and all the sessions were, really focused on the things that were coming up, modern application architecture, different security sessions that we have as well. We have our thought leaders presenting at that. So I think it'll be a great time. 2 days compact, we're going to get in, get out with all of the content on there. So be sure to register for that. All right. Otherwise, I am going to go ahead and give you a little bit of a clip around agility here, and we will bring on Jason just after this.
Man, a good bass line gets me moving,
It's a nice little funk there that they got going on.
Yeah, totally.
Actually, I should give a shout out. Jeff Drew, who is one of our global solutions architects. Check out his YouTube channel. It is Jeff the Cloud Guru, I believe. But he actually recently posted, he plays music, and he recorded his own intro music playing alto saxophone and a few other instruments. I don't know if he was just playing synthesizing on the other instruments, but he's actually playing his alto sax in the intro clip. Super cool. Really talented folks that we work with here. So some music for everybody there. But yeah, Jason, how you doing?
I'm doing quite well. I'm excited. We're getting snow. We're on day 2 or 3 now of ice and sleet, and now it's fully snow. Wow. So I think there's about 5 inches we're supposed to top out somewhere around 6 to 9 inches here in our area. So, I know for all of you who live up north and get snow all the time, that's no big deal. But, I'm in the teardrop of sadness on the side of St. Louis where all the snow goes north, west, east, and south of us. But there's this little teardrop shaped window in my town where we hardly ever get anything. And so,
wow.
I don't know if it's the heat island of the city where, as the storms come through, for whatever reason, we just don't get snow that often. So it's nice. Wow. I'm excited.
Yeah, very cool. Over here, we've got a little bit of snow coming back over in the Pacific Northwest. We just had a heck of a winter. It seemed like there. It kind of compressed too, like, kind of had a week or a couple weeks, and it was kind of done, it felt like. And then we're back to a little bit of snow right now, just a bit of a dusting. So a little bit interesting, but hopefully a lot more ends up on the hills and I can head back up there. Got a question for you today, Jason.
Okay.
I didn't tell you about this ahead of time, but my question for you today is, if you think back to all the years that you've lived in, if you had a time machine, which year would you go back to relive?
Wow. That is, yeah, that's good. I'm not really a live in the past kind of guy. Certainly there's years like back in 2003, probably like I played 3 sports in high school. I played football and basketball or racquetball, depending on the year. My ninth grade basketball coach said, "Jason, you should find another winter sport." Uh, so so then it became racquetball out on the Air Force Base where I was. It wasn't school related, but I got on the ladder out at the Air Force Base and played racquetball. And then I played tennis in the spring. So always played sports. But in '03, I was probably in the best shape of my life. I lost a lot of weight, was doing triathlons, and
Oh,
I was
wow.
eating right. And so that's probably the best physical shape I've been. Plus, child number 3 was born that year. And that was a really good year. So probably
Yeah.
2003, but I tend to be forward focused. I don't really do too much wishing I could be in the past. Like definitely not in high school. A lot of people's like, man, I wish I could be 18 again. No, thank you. How about you?
Oh, that's awesome. I think back to, and I only came up with that question like 2 minutes ago. So I was thinking about what my answer would be myself. And I was kind of thinking around 2004, 2005 was like this time. It was like an awkward time between school and getting into a career. And it was just this whole time of uncertainty. And when you're in that moment, you're like, this is crazy. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with my life. Where is things going to go? What is the next 30 years of my life going to look like? But then when you look back at that, I'm like, that was a really cool time because I didn't know all of those things. I feel like now I kind of have a pretty good idea of how the rest of time is going to go, or at least, to a certain degree. You can't predict everything, but
Right.
having this complete blank slate in front of me of, I think it's going to go this way, but I have no idea whatsoever. And it was interesting for me. So that's what I would pick
Yeah.
about
Okay.
that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, our good buddy, former
Ah,
F5er, makes me sad to say that. Our good buddy John checking in on the show. John, good to see you in the audience.
yeah, I know. John, you feel free to answer that question as well.
That's right. And then
Um,
from Daniel, our I guess last month's featured member of Dev Central, and predictions will continue to be my favorite color. Yes, that's a green screen joke. Okay, so
mm,
I'm not up on my hex character numbers, but yeah, that's great. And then of course he follows that with something important with machine learning will happen
mm,
in 2022.
mm,
So, and
yeah.
Aditya, hello, how are you? Good to see you.
Oh, awesome. All right. Well, we're going to get into those predictions today. I wrote down a couple here and we'll see how many we get through in a little bit here. I think I'll go first. My first prediction, and I don't think I'm going to be too far off the mark. Maybe I will be, but is the rise, and I've talked about this with Lori McVitie, the rise of on-prem data centers, but they won't necessarily be full-on data centers, and they won't necessarily be managed the same way that they are now. So what I mean by that is we saw the migration of compute out to public cloud, and then I think the appeal to that to everybody was the transaction itself was so much easier, and the management of it was so much easier. And people were saying, "Hey, I want to get out of the managing a data center space." And I get that, totally get that. But as I look at my Intel NUC now and how much compute and how that's replacing 4 U's of servers, and I've got a NAS coming up as well that I'm going to build out, and how much data I can store inside of that, and it's this big. Why not? We talk about this with edge computing, and we have the ability to spin up these customer edges on anything. we're probably not too far off of just being able to deploy a data center that maybe 10 years ago it was 10 racks, and now that data center is going to sit underneath a desk or over in a closet or something like that. We have the data replication technology to be able to take whatever form factor those applications are in. If they're in a VM, if they're in a container, if they just exist as functions, those can be backed up pretty easily now. But we have the ability to bring a lot of that compute back and not have to rely on these huge, massive data centers anymore. And we have fiber like I have fiber to my house. I think you have fiber now as well.
I do.
Jason.
Yeah.
So we have fiber everywhere, and we have all this connectivity anywhere. So that's my prediction: is we're going to see this rise of having compute kind of repatriate back home. Not everything. There's a need for having certain parts of applications exist in certain parts of the world, even. But there's a lot of core, and Lori called this core services. Having that core kind of come back home. So that's my prediction. It's supported by AWS Outpost, Azure Stack, Google Anthos at this point. They all the big three cloud players have a play in having on-prem hardware. F5 with the Volterra stuff. We actually have Volterra hardware that can live on-prem, or we have smaller IoT devices as well that can live out there. So the infrastructure is there. I think it's just kind of ready and waiting for people to take a stab at doing something in a big way. So, any comments on that, Jason?
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that, because like you said, the old rack and stack days of on-prem, I think, are not going to come back the way they did. But I think that having a presence makes a lot of sense for performance. For maybe there's some policy reasons. Some of that needs to stay home. But you look at the services that exist now that allows you to have a central policy engine, and so the equipment itself can live anywhere, because the ability to drive things by policy from anywhere makes that conversation kind of irrelevant. Do I have to have it here versus there versus wherever? And DR is still a thing. So even if you use the services of public cloud and all of that, as much as those services want to be 100% available, we've seen over the years that outages still happen. Chaos Monkey's doing its thing, and so having the ability to still drive some of that in your own backyard is not a bad thing, in my opinion.
Yeah. Actually, I'll highlight one of the articles that I just put out on community.f5.com. Everybody want to change your URLs from devcentral.f5.com to community.f5.com. Mark Dittmer did a video on using the External Dns Crd in Kubernetes, which is a newer CRD that was implemented in Kubernetes, and that allows you to control an F5 DNS or other services as well. But you can control an F5 DNS and control your wide IPs in between data centers. And so, when you talk about policy, we have a definition of a service now inside of, at least in the form of Kubernetes. We have a definition of a service. It can have that DR built into it. So you have this kind of all-in-one policy now, I would say, to deploy an application, have that DR capability, and because it has the portability of Kubernetes, maybe it just does exist inside of an Intel NUC, and then it also exists outside in a data center somewhere else. Super easy to control.
Yeah. Well, I'll jump on my first one. Since I have a question here, any predictions in cybersecurity domain from Akshay? And to Daniel's point about the rise of ML, I think that we're definitely going to see whack-a-mole between the attackers using machine learning to really drive innovation on the attack side, and that's going to require you as a customer, but certainly all the security vendors as well, to drive innovation and defense with machine learning as well. And you look at the machine learning capabilities in a product like our own Shape, that with the fraud detection and bot detection and all of that stuff, that it's a constant feedback loop of hey, this is interesting. And, you take a look at that on the human element, you train your your algorithms and then or your neural networks or whatever, and then that feeds back into the live product, and so machine learning is a huge part of that, and that's not going to go away. That's only going to increase on because the let me see my note here real quick. Yeah, so whether it's looking at the attacks themselves and the way that they are formed and executed, but also on the mass analytics end as well, just looking at is a butt ton, is that, can I say that on this on this show, a butt ton of data, that it's crazy, the amount of we can't process that level of data with our own abilities, but sending machine learning after that to inform us, and then let us provide the things that we are good at on top of that. I think is that there's only growth there.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. There is, what was interesting for me in a couple of the customers that I was speaking to before moving over to this role is the build out of machine learning and data science teams in industries that I didn't think that they would really be using that. And one example is a clothing retailer. And they were using all of those insights to start predicting what customers were going to buy and what kind of products that they needed to create for those customers. And I just thought it was super interesting in that, I thought in the fashion industry, it's just like a designer and they're like, hey, this is what the next year is going to look like for stuff. But that designer is probably now going to be driven by some of the data insights, the butt ton of data that they get out of their consumers at this point. Just a quick shout out. I think this is Jacques' comment from my prediction before, but Jacques Baribeau is one of my personal MVPs. He is one of our partners up in Canada, in Calgary, actually, and worked with him very closely over the years. And so shout out to Jacques. Okay, so I'll go with my next prediction here, and it actually ties into yours. I got this off of the Gartner top 10 predictions for next year, and I thought this resonated really well. Consumers fighting back on their data collection. I think now that I think Apple has the ability to do, I think it's a proxy or a VPN, like straight in the iPhone, so that you don't appear out of your IP address. We've seen, maybe you might not experience this as much, but in Canada we don't get the same Netflix catalog as you do in the US.
Yeah.
So for people who want to experience certain shows that are only available in the US, everybody was getting on VPNs, and I would see advertisements for VPN services on YouTube videos. We would see them just on Google Ads and whatnot. I don't think maybe it was just targeting Canadians, and that's how I was getting shown those ads. But they were making it, years ago, they were starting to make it a lot easier for a standard consumer who's not into technology. They were training them on the idea that, hey, you need to cloak yourself on the internet. You need to go through a proxy, or you need to go through a VPN in order to hide your identity. Apple now, with that service, they also, I believe they took it out of mail, I think it is, or like some of those link trackers that they have, click trackers that they have, taking that out as well. So people are really getting used to the idea of protecting their personal data, their browsing capabilities. I'm always shocked by how many things get presented to me on Amazon through Amazon ads that I don't know how they figured out that I was talking about that or thinking about that, but it appeared on there. So I think I agree with that one. People are getting hip to this, and people are going to fight back on data collection. And thoughts on that, Jason?
Well, yeah, I'm like first in line on that. It's super creepy. I don't know if you've seen the documentary Terms and Conditions. on Netflix. But yeah, that was kind of eye opening. On they make it like 200-page whatever. Nobody reads that stuff, but the things that you agree to give over, and basically the whole point of the show is like anything that's free is you are the product for anything that's free. So whatever your behaviors are, whatever they can collect on you, is the case. And I think forward to when we're all in our our Oculus headsets. Oh, kids must have taken my Oculus. When you get there, it's not even going to be how long like you scrolled your Twitter or whatever, and you stopped at this spot in your feed, and I could be looking off at the TV and I just happen to be there, so they don't really know, am I looking at that or did I just get distracted? I'm looking at some other things. But when you get into the Oculus and you're talking about tracking eye movements and all that, they'll know exactly what you're looking at all the time for how long. And that kind of invasive that kind of invasive tracking is, I think that if we can get ahead of that from a legal protection standpoint, I'm all for that. And I'm not one who is super excited about government regulation. Like I'm a very small government guy, but some things I think are good to protect the people from government, but also from big tech.
Yeah, I agree. Not to get political, I'm somewhat of the same mindset there, and I think government is a reflection of people, and if the people don't want privacy invasion, then the people need to speak to that through government and not let big corporations that have a vested interest influence what we see in the metaverse one day.
Yeah.
All right, over to you, Jason.
All right. Well, I'm going to stay security real quick, and it's just the the IoT attack surface is only going to grow. You have all these little widgets that people release to be fun widgets for your house, or wearable tech or other things. But as is often the case with other technology, security is kind of the last thing that people think about when they think about building these things. And often they're unfixable from the standpoint of upgrades, or it's like if you get a Tesla car, they can push an upgrade to fix whatever bug or vulnerability they have. But a lot of these little widgets, there's no fixing that. So if there are vulnerabilities in them, they're vulnerable until you put it on the ground and smash it, and or let the batteries run out and don't recharge it. And so that attack surface is only going to grow. And then with that the supply chain attack growth, and you look at not the supply chain problems that we're having with getting chips made and getting your dishwasher and oven delivered, and those kind of supply chains are problematic. We're talking about the open source and third party development world, where I don't want to build everything from scratch, so I may add your auth module, and that auth module that you built, you borrowed some crypto libraries from XYZ, and then on and on. And so I have maybe a chain of 7 different things that when I use that one end product, from my perspective, it's actually a platform of like 70 different products that 70 different teams maintain or don't. And when anyone can submit a patch into one of those things and get it in there, and then all those updates roll up to me, then you get issues like we had with the SolarWinds attack and all that nobody discovers it for a long time.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to grow for sure.
And, to your point there, I was just reading an article. It was on TechCrunch about a week ago, and it was raising the concern of open source. Not a concern, like it was highlighting that open source right now with Log4j brought it to light. Log4j is maintained by like 3 people. And it was like, okay, 3 people who don't get paid are maintaining this project that was a huge concern for everybody. And those people not getting paid were working around the clock to patch this thing. and it was just out of their own spirit and passion for their own project, and they did it, and everybody, we all should thank them for that. But that highlights a vulnerability, or that highlights a concern, especially with the other project that they brought up was OpenSSL.
Yeah.
There's contributors to it, but it's managed primarily by one person. And so that one person could get hit by a bus, and then somebody's got to jump in, and it's not held by, we don't, open source has purpose, and the structure of it is important. But if there's no kind of structure, as in like a governance model, and it's kind of just managed by one person with volunteer hours, where does that leave us when it comes to, an application that might use 70 different other packages out there, and then that one breaks?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it just to like go a little bit longer on the open source. I think we talked about this at our year-end recap about F5 putting money where its mouth is with open source investments. And I think that when you think about the global good, the open source community is great, but we need more corporate investment in open source, because we all benefit from it. We all make money off of it. And so, we all ought to be contributing to it. And, when even to head off issues like that. And you look at things like you mentioned SSL. I don't know if it was Heartbleed or one of the other ones that came out right about the same time, but that bug had been in there for 15, 16 years, and it took that long to find that one. And so, that it's not surprising that these things are going to be targeted. And so you got to be careful out there and make sure, on your end, if you're using all of those, make sure you have a map. If you haven't checked out some of John Capobianco's work and how he's mind mapping everything, mind map your open source so that you can see every individual component that you actually have in your production environment, or even in accessible lab environments. Make sure you understand what you're using, so that when those vulnerabilities come down, you're aware. And things like GitHub, if you have your code on GitHub, they let you know, hey, you're using this, you should upgrade because there's a vulnerability. And that's really helpful.
Oh, that's really cool. My, we're just wrapping up here. This shirt I actually bought from the CNCF, so hopefully I'm contributing a couple bucks over to the CNCF. Most of the money I paid actually went towards shipping to Canada, but that's okay. I still bought the shirt. It's been interesting to see all of the projects that get donated into the CNCF. They have a governance to them. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out when it comes to something like a vulnerability is exposed maybe in one of those projects, how they can handle that quicker, because they have headcount that are donated from big corporations to help work on this stuff. So I think that's a cool model. Looking forward to seeing how that plays out. But I think that's hopefully one way to manage some of these bigger projects, like a Kubernetes project. I can't imagine, how much havoc could be wreaked if there was a major problem with that and they didn't have the resources to fix it.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. I think that's it for today. Any final words, Jason, or you want to pop over to what's coming up?
Well, I did want to share a couple predictions about 2022, not made now, but made 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And so English author W.L. George had an article in the New York Herald. And 100 years ago, he said he suspects commercial flying will have become entirely commonplace. And at the time, we're talking 19 years after the very first flight ever. And so says it'll be totally commonplace, and that the flying convoys of plane after plane would cover the distance between London and New York in about 12 hours. Of course, that's about 6 hours now. But one of the other ones I'll share real quick is about telecom. And it says, we'll probably never see a wire outlined against the sky. It is practically certain that wireless telegraphy and wireless telephones will have crushed the cable system long before the century is done. So we still do have cable plant hanging pole to pole and all that. But he's not wrong in that wireless telegraphy is completely taking over.
Yeah. Those are great points there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see, you know, I'm sure people at that time were like, you're crazy. And then lo and behold, here we are.
Yeah, and Ferdinand Schuler also, he was a New York professor in 1922. He had a couple that are not so, come to pass. Anti-gravity screens would prevent airplanes from falling out of the sky, and luxury airships would have elevators, rolling floors, swimming pools, and practically every convenience. Now, that's true of luxury cruises, but it's not so much airships.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I have so much I want to say, and we're up at time. So maybe we'll do another shot, or maybe I'll just drop some of these predictions in the show notes, and we can talk about those offline.
Yeah, or you know what? We do have, if folks check out community.f5.com now, we have a water cooler section on there. So stuff that doesn't fit the regular technical forums or technical articles, we can throw them into the water cooler. There is a Wordle thread going on there right now. Everybody posting their Wordle scores. We encourage the community to come participate in our little Wordle thread here. It's fun to watch. I like watching how people get to the answer and kind of, what the shapes are that took for them to get there. So I encourage everybody to check out the new URL that we have for DevCentral, which is community.f5.com.
Yeah, looking at all the Wordle stuff, I'm equally fascinated by that, and I wonder if anybody's like reverse engineered a way to take, everybody's greens and then yellows, and then look at what potential words that were at each step of the way for them.
Yeah, that would be interesting, actually. Maybe someone can make an open source project.
Yeah, so I'll start a water cooler thread on predictions for 2022 after we wrap here, and I'll dump some of the rest of mine in there. Yeah, so definitely come over to community.f5.com and check out the water cooler. I'll have that post up shortly.
Yeah, awesome, cool. Feel free to, we'll take the comments that people have left for predictions. We'll throw them into there, and then, anybody else can jump in on that. So let's do a really quick go around here. I'm not going to talk about security sidebar because we've got a little bit of a clip on that, but we've got next Thursday, DevCentral Connects blockchains, NFTs, hype or here to stay. I think that'll be a cool conversation. It's a big topic right now. We're seeing different use cases for it, but it also needs to be demystified a little bit. So we're going to have one of our blockchain NFT experts join us for that one. 15th, we're going to do the Agility 2022 pre-show, and that is the day that the Agility starts. So we're going to do a bit of a pre-show for that one, and join us for all the festivities that we'll have during Agility as well as the DevCentral team all getting together. On the 17th, we'll do an Agility 2022 recap. So the sessions for Agility will be available after the fact. We'll do a recap, and hopefully that will help people decide what kind of content that they want to consume from that. Maybe they aren't available to take in all 2 days worth of content. There's a ton of stuff. There's like 99 sessions or so. So maybe we can highlight some of the best out of that.
Yeah, and we'll be doing live shows during Agility in Zoom format. So if you want to join us, we'll be actually face to face instead of just face to your screen. So join us for that. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that will be cool. And we'll do a top 5 after that one. And then we will have another show that I didn't put on here, but it's going to come after some stuff that's being announced at Agility. So you want to be there for the announcement, and then we'll also reveal what the show is going to be about after that as well. Looking forward to it. Let me pull that off. All right. Great show today, Jason. It was good chatting with you. From here, let's see what Peter has to say. And otherwise, we will see everybody next week.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Next time on Security Sidebar. Even though John Wagnon has moved on from F5, his last words to us were, "Go on without me." And we shall fulfill his wish. Give a warm community welcome Tuesday, March 8th, 9:30 a.m. Pacific for Security Sidebar with F5 Labs. Sander Vinberg and Malcolm Heath We coming on the show to talk about their latest threat intelligence, insights into vulnerabilities in the wild, and sneak peeks into upcoming threat research before it's even published. Should be a great show. We look forward to seeing you Tuesday, February 8th, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. Security Sidebar with F5 Labs. See you then.